March 15, 2023. The camera in the upper corner of the office recorded everything in silence. Its wide, downward angle captured the heavy oak desk, the leather chair behind it. The shelves lined with leather-bound volumes meant more for display than reading. The timestamp glowed in the corner of the frame, 8:47 p.m. Booker T. Vance sat at his desk, shoulders squared, reading glasses low on his nose, the faint lamplight carving deep lines into his 70-year-old face. Outside the office windows, night had settled over Olympia Fields like a drawn curtain. The door opened. Harper Bennett stepped inside, blonde hair pinned neatly at the back of her head, heels clicking softly against hardwood. At 36, she carried herself with the kind of quiet efficiency that had defined her for over a decade. A folder rested against her hip. She approached the desk without hesitation. Booker looked up, and something shifted in his expression. Not surprise, not alarm, but recognition. She placed the folder down. They exchanged a look that lasted a beat too long for employer and employee. Then Harper moved around the desk. The camera did not blink. She knelt, disappearing from view beneath the polished wood. Only her calves and high heels remained visible, extending from the shadowed space below. Booker's jaw tightened. His hand curled slightly on the armrest of his chair. His eyes closed for a brief second, not in distress, but in surrender to something inevitable. 6 seconds. Then the recording ended. 3 days later, Harper Bennett was dead. On the morning of March 18th, police responded to a welfare check at a modest apartment complex on the east side of town. Harper hadn't shown up to work. She wasn't answering her phone. When officers entered her unit, the stillness struck them first. The living room was tidy, the air faintly scented with lavender. Harper lay on the floor, one arm bent awkwardly beneath her, a single gunshot wound to the chest. No overturned furniture, no broken locks, no struggle. Whoever had killed her had been invited inside. The coroner would later estimate her time of death between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m., just hours after the camera captured those 6 seconds. To understand what happened, you had to understand the triangle that had formed, slowly, almost imperceptibly, over years. Harper Bennett had come to Chicago after college with ambition and discipline. In 2011, at 24, she became the personal assistant to Booker T. Vance, a rising titan in commercial real estate. He was 58 then, sharp, driven, and already wealthy. Harper managed his life with precision. Meetings, travel, correspondence, she knew his schedule better than he did. Over 12 years, she became indispensable. The first voice he heard in the morning, the last person he spoke to before leaving the office at night. What began as professional admiration softened into something quieter and more dangerous. A shared glance during late meetings, conversations that drifted beyond contracts and closing deals, dinners that lasted longer than necessary. The emotional intimacy crept in gradually until the boundary between business and personal dissolved completely. By 2023, their connection was no longer subtle. Lorraine Vance had known Booker for 35 years. She married him in 1988 when his empire was still scaffolding and blueprints. She had hosted dinners, charmed investors, built a social presence that complemented his ambition. Together they had constructed not just wealth, but an identity. Mrs. Vance of Olympia Fields, the country club, the galas, the house that overlooked manicured greens. But marriages can cool without collapsing. By the 2010s, they occupied separate bedrooms, separate routines, separate silences. It was not hatred that bound them together, it was habit, and the architecture of a life too large to dismantle. Lorraine told herself that distance was normal, that appearances were enough, until Harper. Booker spoke her name often. Harper arranged this, Harper suggested that. Harper stayed late. Lorraine noticed. She watched the pattern form and refused to name it. But suspicion has weight. It settles in the chest and refuses to dissolve. In February 2023, Lorraine installed a camera in Booker's home office. Small, discreet, mounted high in the corner. It streamed directly to her phone. She told herself she only wanted confirmation. On the night of March 15th, she opened the app. She watched. 6 seconds. She didn't cry, didn't scream. The betrayal was not explosive. It was clarifying. 35 years reduced to an afterthought beneath a desk. Beneath the shock was something colder, fear. There had been a prenuptial agreement. If Booker divorced her, Lorraine would receive $2 million, a fraction of his $14 million estate. She would lose the house, the status, the life she had curated for decades, and Harper would step into it seamlessly. Lorraine sat very still after closing the app. The silence around her felt immense. Within the hour, she opened the bedroom safe and removed the 9mm handgun Booker kept for protection. It felt heavier than she expected. Final. At 10 p.m., she drove to Harper's apartment. She parked down the street, waited, slipped inside when a resident exited, climbed the stairs. When Harper opened the door, confusion flickered across her face. "Mrs. Vance?" Lorraine stepped inside. The door closed. The shot echoed once. Harper collapsed before understanding what was happening. The lavender candle on the coffee table continued to burn. Lorraine stood over her, breathing hard but steady. Not hysterical, not wild, just resolved. She wiped the door handle, took the stairs back down, drove home, returned the gun to the safe, showered. By the time Booker came home after 1 a.m., Lorraine was in bed. The investigation moved slowly at first. No forced entry, no theft, no obvious motive. Booker presented himself as devastated, a grieving employer, a loyal husband. He did not volunteer details about the affair. The break came from the cloud storage linked to the office camera. Detectives watched the 6-second clip. They traced the account registration to Lorraine Vance. Ballistics matched the bullet to the 9mm in the Vance safe. Cell tower data placed Lorraine near Harper's apartment that night. When confronted, Lorraine maintained composure as long as she could. Hurt wife, misunderstood, circumstantial evidence. But facts accumulate weight. At trial, the prosecution built their case not on passion, but on calculation. The camera proved motive, the gun proved means, the phone data proved opportunity. Booker testified. He admitted the affair, admitted the marriage had been hollow for years. His voice broke when he described Harper's laugh. The jury deliberated for 2 days. Guilty. Life without parole. Under Illinois law, Lorraine forfeited any right to inherit from Booker. The life she had killed to preserve vanished completely. Booker sold the house in Olympia Fields, established a scholarship in Harper's name, $2 million for young women pursuing business degrees. He never remarried. Those who knew him said he grew quieter after the trial, as though something vital had been amputated. Lorraine gave one interview from prison 2 years later. She claimed innocence, claimed she had been framed by circumstance and betrayal. But the 6-second clip remained. 6 seconds of intimacy that exposed a marriage long dead. 6 seconds that ignited fear. 6 seconds that cost Harper Bennett her life. In the end, Lorraine had not acted out of love. Love might have demanded confrontation, or courage, or even departure. What drove her was preservation, of status, of wealth, of identity. And in trying to protect everything she had built, she ensured she would leave it with nothing. Harper Bennett was 36 years old. Her life ended on a living room floor because someone could not accept that marriages sometimes end quietly and that dignity is cheaper than blood. The camera had recorded a moment it was never meant to capture, and that moment rewrote 3 lives forever.